NBA 2K20, they added all decade teams into the game. So you can face off whatever your favorite era is in NBA history, whether that be the 2000s, the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s. You can actually face any of those teams off, the greatest players from that era, off against each other. So I thought it would be a good idea to actually take these teams into a My League and find out which one of them is the greatest era in NBA history. Now, unfortunately, 2K doesn't allow you to just straight up take the teams into My League. So what we have done is we've copied the rosters. We've put all the players that they have on the official era rosters, and then we've just created teams inside of My League. And they are just going to be the normal like Bucks, 76ers, all of that. We got the 90s here. We'll go through every team and show you who's all on it. First off, we got the 90s. They got Jordan, John Stockton, Hakeem, Scottie Pippen, Karl Malone, Clyde Drexler, David Robinson, Gary Payton, Patrick Ewing, Penny Hardaway, Alonzo Mourning, Shaquille O'Neal, Grant Hill, and that's going to round off that team. Each team has 13 players, but in 2K, you actually need 14 players for a roster. So there's always going to be just one extra guy. He won't play during the season at all, though. Moving on, next we got the 2000s. We got Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, 399s on this team. LeBron James, Shaq, Dirk, Allen Iverson, Dwayne Wade, Steve Nash, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, Paul Pierce, Yao Ming, Jeremy Lin, and then Jeremy Lin is not on it. He's just going to be the extra for this team. Up next, we got the 2010s. Yet again, we got LeBron James, we got Curry, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Giannis, Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, Dwayne Wade, Dwight Howard, Carmelo Anthony, Anthony Davis, and that is going to be our 2010 team. Up next, we got the 70s. They're in kind of a weird order. Just the way I made a roster, I kind of messed up the order. We got Kareem, Walt Frazier, Julius Erving, John Havlicek, Elvin Hayes, Rick Barry, Pistol Pete, Bill Walton, Wes Unseld, Dave Cowens, JoJo White, Bob McAdoo, Bob Lanier, and that is going to be that squad right there. Next, we got the 80s. We got Magic, Jordan, Larry Bird, Moses Malone, Kareem, Hakeem, Isaiah Thomas, George Gervin, Kevin McHale, James Worthy, Julius Erving, Dominique Wilkins, and Adrian Dantley. And then, of course, our last player right there. That's going to be our 80s team, though. And then last but not least, we got the 60s. We got Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor, Bob Cousy, Bob Pettit, George Mikan, Jerry Lucas, Willis Reed, Richie Gerwin, Sam Jones, and that is going to end up this team. There's one player on this team that actually isn't in the game. He's only on the era squad, so we actually could not add him onto our list right here. So they're going to have two substitutes, but they won't be playing at all, so it doesn't matter. And those are going to be all our teams. We're going to simulate a season, see what kind of stats these guys can pull in today's NBA, and then we're going to see which one of these teams can win the NBA championship. All right, we made it to the end of the season. Elgin Baylor actually ends up getting MVP. Definitely not who I was expecting to get MVP. Actually puts up some pretty good numbers. Zion is Rookie of the Year. Magic Johnson is 6th Man of the Year, so he's not even starting on his team. Defensive Player of the Year goes to Bill Russell, who didn't do much on offense. Apparently did good on defense. Coach of the Year goes to Brett Brown, which is the 90s team, and they go 77-5. Let's see what players actually made it. We got Elgin Baylor from the 60s team. We got Larry Bird from the 80s, LeBron from the 2000s, and Anthony Davis from the 2010s, all making it on the All-NBA teams. And then the defensive teams, we got a lot more of the era players. Checking out the standings now, I actually separated the teams into two conferences. So we got 3 teams in each conference, and of course, it's not going to be the actual conference they play for in real life, as when we go to the West, we got Milwaukee and Cleveland there. But in the East, the 90s team doing the best, 2010s in 2nd and the 80s in 3rd. Over in the West, we got the 60s team up in front, the 2000s in 2nd, and the 70s in 3rd place. So the 60s and the 90s team are going to get a bye until the conference finals, until they actually have to face off against one of these other era teams. Checking out some of the all-star participants, we got LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Kareem, Karl Malone, Kevin Garnett, Shaq, Hakeem, Scottie Pippen, Bob Cousy, Walt Frazier, and James Harden. Every single player from the Eras team every single player on this all-star team was on one of the Eras team. Then we got Stephen Curry, LeBron, Magic, Wilt, Elgin Baylor, Durant, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, John Stockton, Jerry West, John Havlicek, and LeBron James. Kevin Durant is actually the only player, and Stephen Curry. These are actually the current players, not the Era team players. And then also LeBron James is the current as well. And yeah, that's the only one. LeBron, Curry, and Durant are the only current players on the team. Everybody else is from the Eras teams. But let's see which two teams are going to end up facing off against each other. Also, just checking out the stats for the season. This doesn't really mean too much. We actually don't have any of our Eras players on there. But stats don't really matter because they're facing off against teams that are way worse than them. So our first two matchups, we got the 2010s versus the 80s and the 2000s versus the 70s. Leave your comment down below on which one of these Era teams you think is going to come out on top. Let's just start off. Let's just go over into simulate round and kind of go game by game here, see which team ends up winning. The 2000s actually have a 3-1 lead, and the 80s team with a 3-1 lead as well. Looks like they're going to be the two teams moving on. And the 80s team ends up going to a game number 7, but they end up defeating the 2010s, and the 2000s defeating the 70s. So we got 60s versus 2000s in the West, and 90s versus 80s in the East. Let's see which two teams are going to make the NBA Finals. Now, unfortunately, we can't actually simulate game by game in 2K20, which is kind of annoying. Let's just head into the simulation here. 80s, 90s all tied up, 60s taking a lead, 90s taking a lead, and the 90s move on to the NBA Finals. They're going to be facing off against the 60s. So 90s and 60s going to be our two teams in the NBA Finals. Let's see which one actually gets the W. The 90s are up 3-0. And the 90s end up getting a 4-0 sweep against the 60s. So the 90s, according to NBA 2K20, are your greatest era in NBA history. What are your guys' thoughts? Do you think they're the best, or do you think another era would actually do better in real life? I mean, the 90s did have some amazing players. Let's find out who actually gets Finals MVP after this game. But the 90s really did not struggle at all. They got a 4-1 W in the conference finals and then a 4-0 sweep in the finals. They also had that first seed in the East as well. So they actually ended up winning this pretty easily. No other team was close at all. I'm assuming Michael Jordan is going to end up being the Finals MVP. He's highest overall. Arguably the greatest player in NBA history. But Karl Malone is going to end up being our Finals MVP. Not putting up any crazy numbers. 17.5 points per game. 6 rebounds, 7.5 assists. I mean, I guess those are pretty good considering the team he is on. But that is going to be it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy it, of course, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you aren't. We're going to have a ton of 2K20 content coming out soon. This has been your boy Smequle, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
Coming in, flex. I just wanna win, LABB, who we running with, 2, 2, 3, 3, I'm on 10 again, state your name. Big dope on flame, I just switched the lanes.